Chapter 146. Blooming Business 9, but even if he didn't say, it didn't mean that the student wasn't curious. His words were too vague. What a lack of sincerity. I've already told you about Chao-Ching-Si, what are you still babbling about? Only after further questioning did the student realize that the Lushu classmate he was talking about was a far superior being than Chao-Ching-Si. That's too amazing. Are you sure? So while you guys were hiding, he defeated those 9 skeletons by himself? This student was still protecting his image and never mentioned how he did not plan to fight and was being protected the whole time. That would be embarrassing. He didn't think of the shame which would come now. What did he do earlier? But this student wasn't satisfied with the praises his friend had given Lushu, as he just had a conflict with him. As he said, he's actually just a Tier F aptitude student who was lucky enough to awaken twice. Unlike Chao-Ching-Si, he doesn't have any room for improvement. His schoolmates have already confirmed that his training progress before entering the remains was extremely slow, and even during the training period outside the remains, he didn't make good use of the opportunity. He sacrificed his opportunity by executing a self-destructing move on another talented student to disrupt his training. What a snob. Everyone who knew what Lushu did to Luli felt that it was overboard, but Lushu thought otherwise. Luli was first to pick a bone with him by saying that he was poor and that by hanging out with himself would earn Lushu some small cash. And after Luli had accomplished his training, he immediately arm-wrestled Lushu, which Lushu took the opportunity to awaken. Reaching the camp, Luli continued mocking Lushu by saying that his quality of food had improved. Lushu didn't feel like he did anything wrong. Based on what do you think I should tolerate your mockery? Based on what do you reckon that I should suck up to you just because I'm poor? None of these make sense. But Lushu didn't feel the need to explain to anyone. What was done, and there's no need to ask for anyone's understanding. The glorious stories regarding Lushu had spread. Beside Chao-Ching-Si, there's another Daoyuan student who could stand up to the skeleton cavalry. In fact, the majority of Daoyuan students were taken under the protection of the Heavenly Network, and all of them were terrified. Only a few exceptions were brave as a tiger. Since everyone was terrified, the news of an appearance of a brave student would spread wildly. Another brave one had appeared within the Daoyuan students. This was like the TV show, Touching China. The participants were chosen because they were able to achieve what others couldn't. Lushu's name had suddenly become a synonym for a great expert. Although his future was looking dim compared to Chao-Ching-Si and his aptitude wasn't as high as Chao-Ching-Si's Tier A, he was still a brave person without question. A group of people was curious. Where's the expert? Let us meet him. The person who was traveling with Lushu had no other choice and started looking for signs of Lushu. But when they found him, the timing couldn't be worse. Lushu was humming a tune and looking over a stall where he had displayed his 2 bundles of weapons. After setting up his stall, Lushu was casually sitting there. Weapons for sale. Weapons for sale. High quality and cheap. They were instantly disappointed. Everyone looked at one another in disbelief. This ragged, wearing 2 watches on one hand and one on the other, with 2 gold chains around his neck person, is that legendary expert? A few of them turned to look at the person who traveled with Lushu, while those who recognized Lushu nodded expressionlessly. Yup, that's him. Wow, everyone took a deep breath. This was different what they had imagined. From Lushu received a wave of distress points. Someone at the side asked curiously, he didn't share any weapons with you after he defeated the cavalry? The person who was questioned once again nodded expressionlessly. Yup, not a single one. From Lushu received another wave of distress points. Someone went over to Lushu's side and felt a strange vibe from the watches, gold chains and other items on Lushu's body. He investigated. How much are the weapons? Exchange them for goods. Watches or gold chains would do, as long as they are worth something, Lushu replied gleefully. The people who saw Lushu's gold chains and watches finally realized where that stuff came from. Lushu received another wave of distress points. He was practically celebrating inside. Are there still any more of such remains? Give me a dozen more. How does the exchange work? Someone asked. Items that are worth 10,000 can be exchanged for a weapon. It's a fair trade. Lu Shu was planning to finish selling his weapons and to leave 5 spears for himself to be used for killing. At this moment, Lu Shu was hopeful. It seemed like there was some mystery inside the hole. If what they were facing inside the hole were ghosts, wouldn't that mean that he had an overwhelming advantage? Upon hearing his prices, most of the students took a step back disappointingly. Even though they were relatively rich, which family would give their high school children something that expensive? And these weapons being sold, who knew if they could be kept after getting out? But soon after, Lu Shu casually said, "Everyone is now stuck at the mysterious chapter, right? What about the credit you're given for contributing a weapon? I've no idea when we would be imparted the chapter after the mysterious senses. Do you guys know?" The students who were about to leave were halted in their steps. They weren't stupid, and what Lu Shu said had caught their attention. Everyone knew that the subsequent chapters for future training weren't easy to come by, as they did not have a tier aptitude like Chaoqingci. Before entering the remains, they had discussed the possible methods to be rewarded training methods for their contributions, but did not come up with anything. And yet, Lu Shu's words had just opened the door to the answer they were looking for. The student who traveled alongside Lu Shu suddenly understood why so many people from the Heavenly Network would buy Lu Shu's weapons. So this was their reason. As compared to just for protection, obtaining the next chapter of training was far more alluring. Lu Shu did not directly state that the weapons could be exchanged for training methods. What if they couldn't? Wouldn't Lu Shu be held solely accountable? Someone suddenly took off his pendant, made of nephrite jade, worth 6,000. Will this do? Barely acceptable. Anyone else would like to exchange? Lu Shu saw the people around him getting excited. His business was finally blooming. Chapter 147. Meeting 10. Don't be anxious, don't be anxious. There's enough for everyone. This gold chain's weight doesn't feel right. Damn, it's discolored. How much did you buy your watch for? Bro, your watch is really too fake. How am I supposed to believe that this watch is worth $10,000 when there are cartoons on it? Is this the Ultraman's version?
Bye.
Last 5 spears, I'm keeping them for my own use. Not selling the fruits. That student who bought a spear just now, it seems like this beautiful lady beside you wants a sword. It's fine if you don't have a gold chain. I'm not that greedy, your watch seems quite decent. In the end, Lu Shu wielded his last remaining sword. It's the last one. Someone has offered a Longines worth $16,000. Anyone willing to offer more? There were huge crowds of people in front of Lu Shu now. It was absolutely packed. Some of them really intended on getting themselves a weapon. Everyone already knew about getting a weapon to claim some credit. The rest were there to check out the commotion. After all, not everyone had expensive stuff on them. Indeed, there were Daoyuan students who carried expensive items, but they still belonged to the minority of buyers. The ones who moved the fastest for the weapons were still the group of members of the Heavenly Network who had valuable items with them. They were clear of the relation between the weapons and the training instructions and manuals they could get. Those Daoyuan students who had valuables were fuming. Many of them were stuck on the mysterious senses chapter. Those students who traveled with Lu Shu were absolutely stunned. Looking at Lu Shu's sales, the serious atmosphere was totally gone. Was this exploring the remains? How could this Lu Shu do this? Can you be any weirder? To be honest, Lu Shu felt rather guilty. He didn't expect his influence to be this big. Why was everyone surrounding him? If this was found out by the higher management of the Heavenly Network, it was okay. If they punished him by not providing him with magical stones, he didn't need them anyway. But what if they banned him from entering other remains in future? How would he trade and do business? he could only tell Li Yixiao when he sees him. Seeing Li Yixiao's sense of brotherhood and honor, he would definitely not lie after saying that he would look out for Lu Shu. Li Yixiao was a heavenly king with the highest class within the heavenly network. Although Lu Shu didn't know how Li Xiaoyi would react, he could only play by ear. If everything restarted, Lu Shu would probably have done everything the same way. After all, the punishments the heavenly network could mete out to him were probably not a big issue. Since some people saw him steal the spears, no one had much to suspect about him. He only wished to go out and sweep the area once more, to see if there were any surviving skeletons. Once he confirmed he would stop selling when he was left with 5 spears, the surrounding crowd started to disappear. They all bought the weapons to gloat as indeed, regardless sword or spear, they were of great quality. Someone from outside shouted suddenly, "Lu Shu. The teachers of the Heavenly Network are asking for you for a meeting." Meeting? Lu Shu was stunned. What meeting? He was just a student, why did the Heavenly Network look for him? He walked towards Chao Qingxi to see what's going on and realized there was a person by her side telling her something. Chao Qingxi then nodded her head and followed that person to the meeting point of the Heavenly Network. Lu Shu thought for a moment. They gathered them probably due to the fact that they were useful for battle. And he felt that there was some need to participate in the meeting. After all, the relic was yet to be found. No one could say for sure, but there might be some new treasures within the pothole. With treasures come benefits. Lu Shu was actually addicted to selling equipment. Lu Shu stayed silent for a moment and made his decision. He grabbed his remaining 5 spears and sword and started making his way to the meeting point, clanking along the way. At this moment, every one of the Heavenly Network members was gathered at a corner. This was probably the entire Heavenly Network of Yuzhou, comprising a few hundred people. The lowest class here was Class E, and no one knew what the highest class was. The power of this group of people was quite intimidating. Everyone was discussing something, but one of their identities was evidently different. Lu Shu started sensing. The other party exuded a power far greater than a normal member of the Heavenly Network, but he did not have the aura and terrifying power of a heavenly king. Class C? Lu Shu thought. He must be looking at a Class C expert within the ranks of the Heavenly Network. He had always thought that no Class Cs were involved in this operation. It seemed like he was wrong. In actual fact, there were 3 Class C experts in the remains this time, but the other 2 were, like Li Yixiao, battling with other experts who were in here for unknown reasons. No one even knew if they were still alive. At this moment, everyone was discussing an issue but looked over at the source of a constant clanking. From Shi Fei's distress, plus 31. From Lu Xuanyu's distress, plus 43. This was a humongous wave of distress points. Shi Fei recognized his student Lu Shu immediately from within the group of people. But, what was with this kid and the gold chains on his neck? Wasn't all that clanking caused by the gold chains? And what's with all the watches on your hand? Why do you have a watch dangling on your neck? Was he here on a trip to the remains? Everyone was confused. Some people had no idea what was happening until a small voice broke the silence. This is the student who was selling weapons. Everyone then realized. Oh, it's as such. Everyone then understood why Lu Shu was dressed this way. But even if they knew the reason, it didn't alleviate them of their annoyance. This was absolutely ridiculous. That unidentified practitioner sized Lu Shu up with a weird expression. So you are student Lu Shu? Yes, I'm Lu Shu. Lu Shu was flooded with a huge wave of distress points and he didn't know which line belonged to this practitioner. So he actually couldn't make use of his system to find out one's name if there were too many people. Hi, I'll be replacing Heavenly King Li in leading this operation temporarily. Class C, I hope you would listen to my instructions. My surname is Zhong, you can call me by my name, Zhong Yutong. The man speaking felt slightly troubled. He had heard about Lu Shu and Chao Qingxi, and actually appreciated these two Daoyuan students. At least Daoyuan class had these two students who did not let him down. But seeing Lu Shu's appearance, he decided to retract part of his opinion. Daoyuan class had at least one student, Chao Qingxi, who lived up to his expectations. He thought for a moment before speaking, and, aren't you well versed at throwing spears? Then don't sell the last 5 spears.
Yeah.
I'm not selling, Lu Shu promised as he thumped his chest, the gold chains clanking simultaneously. Chapter 148. Cultivating Sword with Effort. 11. The main objective of this meeting wasn't to recruit students like Lu Shu and Chao Qingxi, but to discuss how to proceed with the exploration of the remains in the pothole. If every site of remains had a relic, given that this place was the heart of the remains, and that mysterious sightings were the most abundant here, the relic must be down there. It was really a giveaway question this time. When someone thought about giveaway questions, they once again contributed distress points to Lu Shu. Lu Shu kept his usual smile and didn't have any visible reaction. Let's see what's under there first, Class C. Zhang Yutong said. Can the newly invented drone be operated here? A practitioner at the side, carrying a silver box, shook his head, still not working. Lu Shu was stunned. There's even technology for exploring? But it seemed like all battery-powered equipment couldn't be used inside the remains. His own phone had run out of battery, so he didn't try it, and as for the corpses of the students he passed by, Lu Shu did not go and bother them as a form of respecting the dead. He only overheard about it at the canyon from Lu Xuanyu and the rest that after coming in, all signal-dependent equipment could no longer be used. Zhang Yutong thought for a moment, then let me use my sword manipulation to explore. A group of people came to the pothole as a small flying sword flew out from Zhang Yutong's body and disappeared into the pothole. Lu Shu was curious. So a sword could be manipulated as a drone? His own level must be extremely low as he could only bring out about 10 to 20% of the corpse dog's true powers. Besides killing capabilities, his corpse dog was worse in every other aspect. After asking Lu Xuanyu, he found out that a Class C sword manipulation wasn't achieved within a day. It required painstaking effort to cultivate a sword of your own and to practice this cultivation every single day. Lu Shu asked curiously, you can only cultivate one? Lu Xuanyu thought for a long time, you can cultivate a few, but I heard that cultivating too much would cause a lack of blood. Lu Shu was disappointed. What exactly is lack of blood? But it seemed like his corpse dog did not require any form of cultivation and that it was breathing the same celestial energy as the stars. Should I go back and try using some effort? Seems like staying with the heavenly network has its benefits. At least I could gain more knowledge. But, could it be that every nebula would develop a flying sword like Corpse Dog? Wouldn't that be really awesome? If the second nebula would develop another sword of the 7 instincts, he still wouldn't be on par with an actual Class C practitioner. But this way, he could have an idea of his potential. Previously, he was thinking about how they always said that a sword could travel 1,000 miles to take people's heads in movies. But being 1,000 miles apart, what if you got the wrong head? But he now understood that a flying sword could be infused with the user's senses. Lu Shu's mind functions very weirdly compared to the rest and always noticed things that others wouldn't. A frown appeared on Zhang Yutong's face as his sword disappeared into the pothole. Within 2 minutes, the flying sword had returned to his body. The pothole isn't too deep, probably about 100 meters deep. But there's another cave down there and I encountered an uncountable number of ghosts. I'm afraid we'd have to wait for Heavenly Kingly to be back before taking action. Zhang Yutong said in a serious tone, the remains in this place is unusual. Its strength far exceeds the other places and there may be more changes. Let's wait, but I don't know if we can wait till. All the Heavenly Network practitioners were disappointed. Why can't the Heavenly King be more reliable? Who knew what he was currently up to? At this moment, Lu Shu's eyes lit up at the knowledge of an uncountable number of ghosts. He didn't seem to be afraid of these things. The plan was temporarily laid aside as Lu Shu started to check his distress points record details. There were too much. Lighting up the 6th star requires 160k distress points. After he had just spent 80k on lighting up the 5th star, he had once again amassed 40k distress points. The Remain was a wonderful place. If only there weren't this many casualties. Lu Shu leaned against a stone wall where there wasn't anyone else. Although he and Chao Qingxi were the center of attention in the Daoyuan class and both of them were people who couldn't fit in with the rest, the reason behind the misfit was entirely different. Lu Shu quickly looked through his records, and the more he looked, the more depressing the situation seemed. He saw 9 different Japanese names. This time, the affected area was huge. It covered the entire core of the Remains, which meant that within the 6,000 plus people inside, there were 9 spies. Not to accuse anyone with a Japanese name as a spy as they could be overseas students, but at this point in time, there were too many different characters around Lu Shu. Lu Shu also knew that the selection of Daoyuan students had a stringent process which would filter out overseas students. This meant that overseas students wouldn't be able to enter the Daoyuan class. Even though Lu Shu knew about the existence of 9 spies within them, he couldn't tell anyone and had no leads as to where to start looking. The affected area was too broad. When the number of people contributing distress points reached a certain extent, the revelation of the real names was of little help. There was no way to tell who was who. As Lu Shu looked at the records, he suddenly remembered something. Why haven't I seen Lu Li or Jiang Shuyi?
Shh.
*T. Could they have been caught up in trouble outside? If the people he was most familiar with had met with an unprecedented death, Lu Shu would be devastated. Even when it came to Lu Li, Lu Shu did not wish for him to die in this place. In a life or death situation, the conflicts he had with Lu Li were insignificant. At this moment, there were sounds of leaves rustling coming from the canyon pathway beside Lu Shu. There were also sounds of heavy footsteps. Lu Shu peeked into the pathway and saw Li Xiao carrying 2 huge trees and a spear, taking big strides towards the heart of Remains. Aren't those green fruit trees? Lu Shu wasn't happy. He had originally wanted to pull out the tree that harvested the squirrel's fruits himself, but he didn't. Lu Shu and Li Xiao met face to face at the end of the canyon. Little bro, that image of yours is really exaggerated. Li Xiao saw Lu Shu's gold chains and watches and said. From Li Xiao's distress, plus 188. Lu Shu saw the scene of Li Xiao carrying 2 fruit trees and laughed, you're no better. Chapter 149, Heartbroken Squirrel, 12. Those who heard the commotion hurried over and many were shocked to see Li Xiao carrying 2 fruit trees. Dumbstruck, Zhong Yutong asked, Li Xiao, you disappeared for so long just to pluck these trees. What are you talking about? Li Xiao carried the 2 fruit trees and continued walking. I was afraid you guys would be hungry. All of a sudden, a squirrel appeared from within the tree crown and stood at akimbo, angrily chirping at Li Xiao. It then plucked off a fruit and threw it at the back of Li Xiao's head as Li Xiao turned around angrily. I've tolerated you for a long time. Stop throwing fruits at me. At this time, the squirrel suddenly noticed Lu Shu within the crowd and was even angrier. One stole fruits and one uprooted the entire fruit tree. Can't believe they're a gang. It then plucked another fruit and threw it at Lu Shu. Li Xiao said happily, my little bro, you stole its fruits too? Lu Shu was pissed as he caught the fruit flying towards him. He felt that something wasn't right. Wasn't the squirrel the especially big one within that cluster of squirrels? Interesting. Lu Shu immediately leaped forward and grabbed hold onto the squirrel, which had no time to dodge as he casually walked away. From the squirrel distress, +1+1+1+1. Previously, Lu Shu felt that although this squirrel was always angry, it was quite cute. He had wanted to catch one back for Lu Xiaoyu but never did get the chance to go back for them due to the green wolves. But all was good now as he caught the unique one. This squirrel was such a miser. Even after the tree was uprooted, it still stayed on it. He wasn't worried that the other squirrels did not have food, as there were many other fruit trees. Lu Shu tried releasing his grip and the little squirrel ran for its life, but Lu Shu instantly extended his arm and caught it back. Lu Shu then released his grip again. In the end, every time before the squirrel could escape past an arm's length, it would be caught back again. The little squirrel was confused. "What is your damn problem?" Lu Shu did this a few tens of times, and the little squirrel finally understood something. This human being wasn't only strong, but shrewd too, and that it could never escape. Lu Shu's image had changed again. It was just gold chains and watches previously, but now a pitiful-looking squirrel sat within his palms. From the squirrel's distress, +1+1+1+1. As Li Yixiao approached, the two tree crowns took up the entire narrow width of the pathway and no one could see behind them. But after he walked out of the pathway, the people inside the core of the remains saw masses of people behind him. Li Yixiao placed the two fruit trees on the ground. "Come, the people of the Heavenly Network, distribute these to the rest." Zhong Yutong pulled Li Yixiao aside. "Li Yixiao, where did you go these few days? Where are the two Class C colleagues with you?" Speaking of that, Li Yixiao became serious. They were sacrificed. This time, the Indians were basically cheating. All of their Class C experts turned up, but we killed them all. The Indians were badly injured and they originally only had a few Class Bs and almost all of their Class Cs were wiped out. I wonder what their side would do after they got out. When an ancient remains appeared within a country, they would initially feel that they had the advantage of it being their home ground and were thus excited. But they only realized the truth later, that if the country itself wasn't strong, the appearance of an ancient remains would signify the beginning of a catastrophe. And the rest of the world's experts would be rejoicing. If a soccer match took place on home ground, you would have the support of local fans and the advantage of playing on a familiar field. But were remains the same? When remains first resurfaced, the country hosting it would have to face experts from the rest of the world. It wasn't a fair one-on-one competition, but one against many enemies. So when a remains appeared in Laos, all of the Laos practitioners were as good as treading on thin ice and did not dare to make any move since they were insignificant compared to the practitioners from the rest of the world. This time, there were heavenly kings keeping watch at the borders of the country, and most of the Class C experts were covering the places that the heavenly kings couldn't. As a result, there were only one heavenly king and 3 Class C practitioners inside this remains. Experts from the rest of the world had thought that it would be like the feast in Laos, but were met with an overwhelming resistance. The average person might not have understood the meaning behind this incident, but to the Heavenly Network, the remain was a side objective and instead, sending the message that the sacred land of China wasn't a place for intruders would have the greatest impact worldwide. Even if Li Yixiao couldn't obtain the relic, he was determined to trap the Indians here. Even the 2 Class C practitioners had to risk their lives in order to aid Li Yixiao in killing all the foreign practitioners. They had one message for the rest of the world. Intruders only had one fate, death. As to why they allowed these many Class Cs in, it was because the Indians were weaker and the Heavenly Network was confident in handling them. Furthermore, Nie Ting and the rest chose to chase the other Class B experts away at the country's border wasn't because they couldn't kill them, but because in the case of an injury, others wouldn't be able to seize the opportunity to intrude. The pressure from the rest of the world was too overwhelming. When the problem was raised to the higher levels of the Heavenly Network, the gain or loss of the remains was no longer the priority. This was the difference in nature of tackling a problem between an individual and an organization. From today onwards, experts from the rest of the world had to understand that this wasn't a place where they could come and go at will. Only by doing this could they protect the country in the magical era and maintain a long-term stability. Zhong Yutong was stunned. So this was the reason why you went to pluck the trees? This placed Li Yixiao in an awkward position as he quickly changed the topic. We fought from the core of the remains to the edges. And that was when I happened across the fruit trees and uprooted them and saved quite some people. Quickly gather a group of people to distribute the fruit, seeing that everyone looks pale and malnourished. Furthermore, how could we continue exploring the remains if everyone starved to death? There was already lack of rations in the remains, especially after everyone had entered. This many mouths to feed wasn't a problem that could be solved with the limited rations the soldiers had. No matter how much dissatisfaction Zhang Yutong had for this heavenly king, he had to agree that the food really came at a critical juncture. The heavenly network distributed slices of the fruit as the little squirrel sat on Lu Shu's palms, looking at the fruits being taken away with teary eyes while it couldn't do anything to stop it. This feeling was so frustrating. From the squirrel's distress, +1+1+1+1. Chapter 150, Bribing the Little Squirrel, 13, Lu Shu glanced down at the little squirrel and saw its teary face, as though it was trying to grasp onto a fruit that was disappearing into thin air. He felt sorry, but how could he possibly comfort it? The fruits inside his pockets, they were originally from the squirrel's tree. After some thought, Lu Shu took out a green fruit from his back pocket and offered the little squirrel. The little squirrel saw the fruit it had lost and looked at it for a while, before looking at Lu Shu momentarily. It couldn't believe that this human was this kind-hearted. Based on his appearance, he didn't look like a decent person. But the little squirrel couldn't overcome its basic instincts as it hugged the fruit it had previously lost and, still teary-eyed, collapsed onto Lu Shu's palms. Lu Shu suddenly thought that if he could bribe this little squirrel into eating the fruits from his system, what would happen? But it wasn't a good time for thinking about this, and Lu Shu put the thought aside. It was Lu Shu's biggest secret, and even if the other party was an animal, he wasn't willing to reveal it. Lu Shu stopped caring how depressed the little squirrel was and noticed Jiang Shuyi from within the crowd of people walking into the core. Jiang Shuyi, here. Previously, he was worried that something had happened to Jiang Shuyi since he was his only friend in school. If Jiang Shuyi had really lost his life in this place, Lu Shu would be heartbroken. Jiang Shuyi turned around and was surprised to see Lu Shu as he immediately rushed over. It's good that you're okay. Lu Shu suddenly felt weird. He cleared his throat. Ahem, you don't have to come so close. Did you encounter any danger outside there? Jiang Shuyi paid no mind to Lu Shu's first sentence and sat right beside him as he exclaimed, I killed 4 horsemen by myself. Impressive, right? After finishing his sentence, Jiang Shuyi noticed Lu Shu's new image and a weird expression developed. Your experience inside this remains seems to be quite unique. Lu Shu wasn't embarrassed at all and proudly asked, how do I look? Extravagant? Jiang Shuyi was stunned. He suddenly felt that no matter where or under what circumstances, this person could make himself comfortable. His clothes were ragged and even his shoes were missing, but this person could still enjoy himself without a tinge of negative feelings. Lu Shu noticed that Jiang Shuyi only had a broadsword. Didn't you kill 4 horsemen? Why do you only have a broadsword? Oh, after killing them I gave them away and left myself a sword and a spear. But after the heavenly king met us, he took my spear away, Jiang Shuyi explained. Lu Shu took a deep breath. What a shameless heavenly king. He reached over and retrieved one of his 5 spears for Jiang Shuyi. This is for you, it's cooler to have the full set. Oh, Jiang Shuyi didn't reject and took the spear. He rarely accepted things from others since he was never lacking in any areas. But when Lu Shu offered him something, for some reason, he accepted it without hesitation. He saw that Lu Shu still had 4 spears left and thought that Lu Shu must have killed 1 more horseman than him. He asked curiously, did you kill 5 horsemen? Not just that. The items on my body, I exchanged 1 weapon for each of them, Lu Shu exclaimed excitedly. Jiang Shuyi was shocked. He had originally thought that both their levels were about the same, but after seeing Lu Shu's delighted look, just how many did he kill? This guy is so strong? At this moment, a heavenly network practitioner walked towards Lu Shu and Jiang Shuyi. He was carrying a standard sword. Lu Shu understood that the heavenly network only distributed standard weapons to class DS and above. Although Chao Qingxi had achieved class D, due to time constraints, she wasn't given one yet but probably would be after getting out. Or, the weapon from the remains may be left with her. Such talents were hard to come by. Student Lu Shu, can I have one of the spears? I can write you an IOU, after we're out, I'll give you the 50,000, the Class D practitioner said to Lu Shu. Lu Shu was stunned. He offered, 50K? This amount is really tempting. Although within the items he got earlier, there was a 30K plus watch, but could Lu Shu still sell it for that price? To be able to sell it for half the buying price was already reasonable. Lu Shu had never been to a pawn shop, but he understood that the selling price wouldn't be that high. So this 50K cash was totally different. But Lu Shu had his doubts whether this person would really pay him the money after getting out. Maybe he might use his status as a Class D practitioner to deny the debt? The amount he offered was too much, making it seem like a bait. If Lu Shu was a normal kid, he probably would have believed him. But Lu Shu wasn't. Lu Shu didn't think that being with the Heavenly Network meant that a person must be of good nature. Aren't there good and bad people everywhere? At this point in time, Lu Shu shook his head, no credits. The other party frowned, do you think a Class D practitioner like me would scam you? Suddenly, Lu Shu's income record was updated, from Ohashi Miku's distress, plus 99. He was shocked, another spy? But Lu Shu wasn't sure if that came from the Heavenly Network practitioner in front of him. After all, he had offended too many people. Lu Shu thought for a moment and tested, you don't have to overthink this. Yes, I'm afraid that you'd go back on your words. From Ohashi Miku's distress, plus 277. Indeed, Lu Shu saw the same name appear in his records once again and realized, this person is a spy. He memorized how the person looked, and even if Lu Shu knew that he was a spy, he couldn't tell anyone about it, let alone do anything to him. The spy walked away depressingly. Lu Shu sniggered, you think a spy like you can have my spear? Jiang Shui glanced at spy walking away, I don't think a Class D practitioner would scam you. After all, he could try to run, but he can't hide forever. Lu Shu suddenly thought, does he want to run? Jiang Shui said that because he doesn't know about that person's identity, but Lu Shu knew. To Lu Shu, it was obvious that the other party must already have some escape plan in mind. A normal Heavenly Network practitioner definitely wouldn't repudiate a debt, but this person is a spy. Lu Shu was pissed. Is this a rip-off right before escaping? Where's the justice?
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens,